Hi guys, and welcome back to Maltbox, the non-chill filtered whiskey blog. I'm Andy and I'm back here today with another whiskey review. Now the whiskey that I'm going to be reviewing for you today is very, very much overdue. As you all know, and as I've said several times, I'm still trying to move house. I've been trying to move house for months. It's doing my nutting. As a result of that, the vast majority, about 90%-ish of my whiskey collection and my samples went in storage. And this particular whiskey was an Irish whiskey that was very kindly provided to me by the company that I'll get onto at the moment, in a minute. And basically this got whisked away. And I haven't been to said storage place for a little while. I haven't looked at what was there. I didn't really account for what was there until I realised, I really want to try that dram and review it properly. So I had a bit of a dig through a couple of the boxes and I managed to uncover it last weekend. So I've had a couple of drams this week, got myself a little bit more used to it, more familiarised with it, should I say. And now I feel that I'm here and I can present it to you fine people. So for a start, I've already mentioned that this sample has been provided. Now it's been provided by the guys at Two Stacks Irish Whiskey. So firstly, thanks to the guys at Two Stacks and apologies for the delay. As I said, it got shipped out, unfortunately. However, just because this sample was provided to me does not mean that we're getting a favourable review as a result. I always say that whenever I look at a reviewed sample on the channel, because it's important to maintain impartiality, a little bit of integrity. I was going to say it's pretty integral to be integritized, I would say. Now, this whiskey, full disclosure, has sold out. So this is kind of if you see it on the secondary market or if you've already got a bottle of it at home, this is for you, basically. Now, it's this. Now, everyone's like, it's just a generic bottle, and it is, but there's the Two Stacks logo on it. You might see a little bit of colour in there. I'm also seeing some cask remnants in there as well, a little bit of swirl. Now, this is actually Two Stacks Polaris collection result from February of this year, 2022. Now, this is a 9-year-old Irish single malt whiskey. I don't know what distillery it was sourced from. Let's face it, choices are going to be relatively limited. You can probably whittle it down to a few that you can probably count on one hand, given the age, shall we say. Now, interestingly, this whiskey was initially matured in ex-bourbon. Yes, get in, because again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, that is right up my street. I love ex-bourbon. Sherried whiskies, I'll be honest, the older I get, the less I get on with them. I find them either too sweet or I find them a little bit too dry, or it overpowers the base spirit. There's a few that I like and I will continue to buy, that I know that's kind of what it's there to do, if you know what I mean. Heavily sherried stuff like sherry bombs and that, I only like them on certain days. I used to neck the stuff. I was like, yes, this is nectar. And now I'm like, do you know what? I've got to be in the right mood for a heavily sherried whiskey. So 9 years ex-bourbon. However, it was then transferred into another cask for 6 months, which is known as a finish. Now, there's a big debate what point does a finish become a second maturation. In my view, I mean, a couple of years maybe, or over 12 months, you could say, because over a certain period of time, that second cask will have a massive impact on that spirit. However, a shorter period can also have a massive impact on the cask in terms of finish if it is a very active cask, and it depends on the cask type. In this particular example, we are talking about an ice wine cask finish. Now, ice wine is pretty unusual. There's very few whiskies I can think of off the top of my head that have been finished in ice wine casks. I think there is another Irish whiskey actually that was finished in ice wine casks, and I believe it's a Writer's Tears release off the top of my head. However, this is a 9-year-old single malt that was then transferred from its ex-bourbon cask into a Cabernet Franc ice wine cask from Canada for 6 months. It was then bottled at 59.8%. I believe it to be non-chill filtered and natural colour. I did get a little info card that came with it. And sorry guys, I'm being useless again because that is somewhere in the box that I managed to dig these samples back out of. But it's a really lovely hopefully you can see it, but I don't think this ring light is particularly good at transferring, and potentially the camera is potentially, good at transferring the natural colour, ironically, that I can see with my eyes compared to what comes through the lens. There's a slight, ever so slight pinkish hue to it. So, without further ado, the nose is lovely. Really, really nice. It does, for me, straight away have a lot of wine influence. Now, I've had a few bottles of ice wine in the past. It is incredibly sweet. It is incredibly, incredibly concentrated. I can't remember off the top of my head around the processes involved in ice wine, I will be honest. I'll hold my hands up. It's not an area of wine that I know much about. I mean, you're looking at Canada, you're looking at colder climate. I believe the processing intensifies the grape somehow, a bit like maybe I'm just chatting out my bum now, but Amarone, like you kind of dehydrate the grape slightly and it gives you that intensity. Could be the same with ice wine, I just genuinely don't know. But it's got that lovely sweetness to it, it's got that intensity, and it has honeyed intensity, and that for me is what ice wine is. It's very, very, very sweet, very honeyed, very, very concentrated. But under that, I think the strength helps it a little bit, to be honest. At 50-odd%, it gives it a little bit of a nip, a little bit of interest, a little bit of lightness. I think this is going to open up with water quite a lot, and I will do that. I mean, there's a little bit of chocolate in there. I've already mentioned honey. Now, alongside that, there's possibly a little bit of aniseed, a tiny little bit of aniseed. And then for me, some of the freshness of that ex-bourbon cask matured Irish whiskey comes through. We've got vanilla, we've got this really nice, very, very kind of barley-led cereal note. We've got green apple. Possibly a little bit of licorice. Cinnamon, and a little bit of spice in the back as well. Now, yes, there was a lot of things going on there, and I kept chatting through all these different flavours. Now, I've said it before, don't take that as gospel. This is just my experience, my flavour library, if you will, of things that I've tasted in the past that I can remember most of the time, things that I have an association with. If you've not tried ice wine, for example, that's fine. A lot of people won't have done, but like I kind of brought it back to, for me, ice wine is incredibly honeyed. So it's about, for me, it's latched onto the honey in there, and that's what I can identify. Whilst you do get that kind of like winey grapiness around the edges. I think already what I can say is it's a very well integrated finish. Sometimes finishes can kill a whiskey. I am partial to a wine finish. I love red wine finished whiskies. I love it. It's just up my street. It adds really nice fruitiness to some very, very flexible spirit, like Deanston, for example, their Bordeaux cask finishes. I love them. Absolutely love them. And this seems to play with that spirit very, very well. On the palate, full strength, 59.8%. I always try not to make too much noise when I drink, but it's a very sensitive microphone. Right, so initially the sweetness comes through again on the lighter end. Oh wow, that's thick. Oh wow, that is going. That is still going. Oh, somebody set a stopwatch. Right, sweetness opens up. Maltiness kicks in. It sort of curves a little bit into black pepper. We then get fruitiness coming back through. We then get maybe some of that ice wine influence coming back in now. A bit more honey, vanilla. The strength didn't make itself known until the palate started to edge off into the finish, and it is an incredibly long finish. It's still going now. I'm talking. I can still feel a very nice warmth in my chest, in my throat. Some people might refer to it as alcohol burn, but I don't see that as alcohol burn. This is not an alcohol burn. I'm not struggling for air. I'm not like, oh my God. it's just a nice warmth. It is lovely. It's not giving me acid or anything like that. It's just very pleasant. It's a nice experience. In that finish, I'm getting some of that chocolate that I mentioned on the nose. I'm getting some of that maltiness. I'm getting this lovely creaminess as well. And I think that for me, the palate it was very intense. And it moves quite a lot. And I think, weirdly, the finish for me had a little bit more impact and a little bit more surprised, I guess. I was just a little bit surprised that the finish was that long. And I'm talking this, I'm still living it, I'm still tasting it, I'm still breathing it every time that I move my tongue and talk to you guys. Very, very interesting. Very, very interesting indeed. I think, for me, possibly the wine cask had a little bit more to say about itself on the palate. Not in a bad way. I think it was very much a palate of two halves, so to speak. I think it was all ice wine cask and then some of the Irish whiskey notes that I'm used to, or that I most commonly associate with, then started to come in. That maltiness, the creaminess, the vanilla, the freshness. Really, really nice drop. Now, I've just added, what you didn't see off screen, maybe you saw me wielding my magic teaspoon. I can't be bothered with drippers because I break them or I make a mess. I mean, teaspoons are pretty standard. A teaspoon's a teaspoon. So I normally go for, depending on the strength, I either go for half a teaspoon or a teaspoon. But for this, I've actually added about 1 1/4 teaspoons in what's left, which is, a fair bit. And I'm just going to give that a couple of minutes just to open up. So I've already mentioned that unfortunately this has already sold out. It was originally bottled in February 2022 and released at the end of February, start of March. Now, this retailed at the time for, well, on the Irish market and European market, it was €85. So I'll tell you what that is in sterling, in pounds, but it's probably about the same at the minute, to be honest, given the way the economy is tanking and that. Again, I don't think you can, I mean, I did a quick Google before I hit record, and I've not seen it on any UK retail shops as such. I think I might have seen one at auction a couple of months back, which in part kind of triggered me to think I really need to go back through that box and try and dig this out. Because I did have a dram of it before I sent it away to storage. I remember thinking, right, I'll come back to that. Not realising that I packed the crate that it was in away, and off it went about 40 miles away, so it's not exactly around the corner. But, I mean, Irish whiskey, and I suppose whiskey in general now, it's up there. It is up there in terms of price, and some distilleries, some companies, some limited editions, some limited releases, such as this Polaris collection release, will drive a slight premium. So €85. Do you know what? That's probably about the going rate for something like this, to be frank. See what I did there? Cabernet Franc ice wine, to be frank. Frank with a C. But I know I spoke, I don't want to sort of like doom and gloom it and that, but we've already spoken before about whiskey being a luxury and how we need to be mindful of what we're spending our money on. And I'm not telling you how to spend your money, spend it how you want. I'm personally being a little bit more cautious. I've bought a lot of whiskey over the last few years, particularly since the lockdown happened. The lockdown, as though there was just one. Just like, is it lockdown 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5? But I got to a point where 4 bottles were turning up from, maybe a month to, God, sometimes 4 a day on certain weeks. And my collection just grew massively because I wasn't spending money on travel into the office, which was great because I also got more time back to myself working from home, which is fantastic. I wasn't spending money on petrol because I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. I wasn't going anywhere to spend the money even if I did get there. So it went on whiskey. And now I've got to the point where I've got that much of the bloody stuff that I'm having to just stop buying it and just get through what I've got. So bear that in mind for future reviews, by the way, because it's not all going to be new releases and new shiny things. So on that note, we've had a bit of time in the glass there with some water. Again, just to give you a nice hint of that colour. It's a lovely, lovely colour to it. It's sort of flitting between sort of like a nice gold and also like a light pink. Very nice. Right, so on the nose with water, it's very, very much for me stripped some of that ice wine influence out, just in my opinion. Not saying that's a bad thing, not saying it's detracting from the whiskey that was cask strength, or high strength, should I say. It's just very different already. It's more vanilla led. It's more of that freshness, more of that green apple. Yes, there's honey in there. Maybe some black currant. Parma violet. A slight bit of menthol or mint. Maybe even spearmint rather than menthol. And peanut brittle, randomly. I do like a nice, fresh, warm peanut brittle. I have to eat it when it's still kind of soft out of the oven because my teeth are knackered. So if I have anything remotely as hard as peanut brittle, I will be at the dentist and he will be rubbing his hands with glee at the amount of cash that will be entering his pocket. So, do you know what now? There is some of that wine cask influence coming out. Maybe more of that honey, a little bit of grapiness. Slight yeastiness, potentially. On the palate. I've destroyed the texture a little bit. It's not as thick, not as oily. But the palate, boom, yeah. Creaminess is there. The maltiness is there. Bit of ginger. A bit more cinnamon. Bit of that apple. Finish, again, long, but it has certainly softened. It's that cinnamon and creaminess mixed together into like a grainy porridge. Very, very soft, very enjoyable. No heat whatsoever now. Really nice drop. Really, really nice drop. And I love the fact they've re-racked it, or recast, however you want to describe it, into that ice wine cask, because it's very, very unusual. It's not something you see every day. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that. And thanks very much for watching. I'm on Twitter at Maltbox, Instagram at Maltbox Whisky. If you like what you've seen today, feel free to subscribe, but I'm not precious, don't worry if not. Thanks for watching. See you soon.